Our next step into creating really nice beginning of a web page is using margins. In this perfect example, I want to add space in between the word detail header and my nav bar. Here's where I really want to be able to go in and start playing with what the margin attribute is. In this case, I'm going to add a margin attribute between the head, the subhead, and the different headers. I'm going to say margin, and again, just like padding, we have got the general margin attribute, margin right, left, bottom, top. I'm going to use bottom, and I'm just going to say it's 20 pixels. Let's save it. Let's reload the page. Well, that's a nice looking space. I'm going to come back here. I'm going to go to my H2, maybe do a 10 pixel, reload. And so now I'm actually really beginning to get some really nice spacing in between these elements. So maybe I'll actually do 5 pixels, I'll save it, I'll reload. And so there's some nice space. Again, it's starting to look like a real page. I can now actually go back to my style guide and say, how about I add some space in between the H4 and the nav? So why don't we come into my paragraph here and say, every paragraph should have some spacing. In this case, I can add it in the spacing, or I can also add it within the ID. Again, if I add it in the global paragraph, every paragraph I add is actually going to be blown up and have all these different pieces, but I want to add that to the nav. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the margin top and margin bottom and say, how about we do 10 pixels each? Again, if I'm doing this on a style guide, what I should be doing is thinking about how that nav bar might actually look like in a real web page. In this case, I know that I'm going to want some space above and space below. Maybe the space below it is a little bit higher. So I'm going to switch it to 20. I'm going to reload. And now the nav bar has some more space underneath it. So this is really nice. Again, here you go. I reloaded it. This is looking really nice. What if I actually wanted to get some space in between the links? A lot of times padding doesn't work on text links, but margin is really helpful because again, I'm really creating a space in between one or the other. So why don't we come in here? I'm going to go into the anchor link that I just created, and let's say that there should be some space, margin right, of maybe just a little bit of 5 pixels. And I have some 5 pixel links in between. Really exciting. I might maybe add a little 10. I might reload. And now these are starting to look at spaces within links. One of the problems that I have here is if, let's say, I have a link that's outside of the paragraph text. So let me copy a link. I'm going to put it right here in between. I'm going to save it. I'm going to reload. Now that link has picked up that right margin as well. Not really one of the most stylistic things that I want to do. In that case, if I wanted to style it correctly, just for the nav bar, I would take this out, and here's where in the nav, and I'll put this right up here, I'm going to create a class, and let's call it navlink. Open it up. Margin right is 10. Let's apply that to right here, my class to these test links, and I'm just going to do one for fun. Class equals, again, one of the important things is make sure I get the class name, save it, and let's reload. Again, here my anchor links within my paragraphs remain the same, just like a standard link, but here is my class with the margin attached. And I can copy this back here. Again, especially, the power being if I want to start adding different attributes to different things, I want to actually use classes instead. Here's margin. It works. Again, sometimes when you use padding doesn't work on certain things like text links or other pieces of bold in the bold text. This is where you want to use margin to work, especially with smaller attributes. Usually within Paragraph, margins and padding work beautifully within divs. We'll talk about divs later. This is where they work really, really clean. So here's margins at work, and you notice that now we're getting to look at something that has a really nice web page feel. And it looks like a great style guide.